2 weeks ago, I introduced a continuing series on the life and lessons of Buddha. And as I sat at the computer to begin planning part 2, it occurred to me that some of you might not have tuned in for part 1. And I suddenly felt the urge to begin previously on Think Like a Buddha, and to show clips from the service the week before. Instead, I'm just going to say this. If you want to know more, you can read and study and practice for a lifetime and still have much to learn about this fascinating faith practice. You can go back and watch part 1 on YouTube, or you can Google a question for online information, or pick up a book from the library or your favorite bookstore. Today I'm going to talk about understanding 2 more portions of the Eightfold Path, right understanding and right speech. I'll also include comments on the Axial Age, a time in which Siddhartha Gautama, the first Buddha, lived. So sit back and enjoy. You don't need a quiz on part 1 to continue forward. Welcome to First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm the Reverend Foerster. Happy to have you with us. Let us begin our worship with music. Thank you, Misha. That was Misha Bresnev, our pianist. Our call to worship is Even This Is Enough, and it was written by Vanessa Southern. So much undone, so much to do, so much to heal in us and in the world, so much to acquire: a meal, a healthy body, a fit one, a lover, a job, a better job, proof we have and are enough just around the corner of now. And up against it, the reality of all that falls short and the limits of today. We honor the limits. If your body won't do what it used to, for right now, let it be enough. If your mind won't stop racing or can't think of a word, let it be enough. If you are utterly alone and in despair, be all that here with us. If today you cannot sing because your throat hurts or you don't have the heart for music, then be silent. When the offering plate goes around and you don't have money to give or the heart to give, let it pass. The world won't stop spinning on her axis if you don't rise to all occasions today. Love won't cease to flow in your direction. Your heart won't stop beating. All hope won't be lost. You are part of the plan for this world's salvation. Of that I have no doubt. The world needs its oceans of people striving to be good, to carry us to the shores of hope and wash fear from the beachheads and cleanse all wounds so they can heal. But oceans are big, and I am sure there are parts that don't feel up to the task of the whole some days. Rest if you must. Then, like the swimmer lying on her back who floats, or the hawk carried on cushions of air, rest in pews made to hold weary lives in space, carved out for the doing of nothing much but being. Perhaps then you will feel in your bones, in your weary heart, the aching, healing sense that this is enough. Even this. That we are enough. You are enough. Enough. Let us enjoy the morning. Let us sing that morning has broken. It's number 38 in our hymnal, and the words will be on your screen.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Thank you, Andy. Our hymn leader this morning is Andy Pierce, and our accompanist is again Misha Beresnev. We're going to light our chalice this morning for ourselves. It might seem strange to you. We usually light it for community, for wisdom, for being able to light it. Oh my. Pretend it's lit and I'll work on it later. Buddha said, maybe this is why it won't light. Buddha said, be ye lamps unto yourselves. Be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as to the only lamp. We are our own chalices. In saying our affirmation this morning that we repeat every Sunday together. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. I've told you before that Buddha made it fairly easy to follow his theology. 4 pillars or truths and 8 simple suggestions for living a stress-free life. But I've also said that practitioners often study a lifetime to reach wakefulness, the goal of Buddhism. So I'm suggesting just 2 simple questions for you today. Ask yourself this: what is bothering me today? One thing only to make it easier on yourself. And what might I learn from today's lessons to relieve the stress? And remember this, every trip starts with the first step. But before we begin and talking about Buddha, I want to tell you a story for all ages. This one's called The Honest Smuggler. It's about Mullah Nasruddin. Now, Mullah Nasruddin is a figure in Hindu and Buddhist storytelling who is destined to bring a smile to every face. He's what you call a wise fool, a trickster, a laugher at tradition. His job is to show you the right way to behave by behaving badly. So enjoy his antics in this ancient story. Mullah Nasruddin came to the border crossing between towns with a donkey laden with straw. And he was met by a border guard who was supposed to charge a fee for anything being brought across the border that might have resale value. He was on the alert for smugglers. "Who are you and why do you wish to cross the border?" demanded the guard. "I am Mullah Nasruddin, and I am an honest smuggler who does not lie," said the man who was leading the donkey. "And what are you bringing across the border?" "My donkey here is laden only with bundles of straw, as you can see," said Nasruddin, bowing before the guard. "Well, it is permissible to carry straw across the border," said the guard, "but I will have to search it thoroughly to make sure nothing is hidden in it." And he did so, but he found nothing, and he let Nasruddin pass. Well, the next day, Mullah Nasruddin came again to the border with a donkey laden with bundles of straw. And again, he said he was an honest smuggler who did not lie. And again, the guard searched through the straw, searched through Nasruddin's clothing, even looked into the mouth of the donkey. But he found nothing but straw, and he let them pass. Every day, Nasruddin showed up with a straw-laden donkey. Every day he was searched and nothing more was found. And this went on for weeks, and then for months, and then for years. From the clothes that he wore and the jewels on his fingers, it was clear that Nasruddin was getting rich over these years. But it couldn't be from smuggling, thought the guard, for he never has anything but straw on his donkey. Finally, after many years of searching Nasruddin's straw, the guard retired. But he continued to think about Mullah Nasruddin. The man had admitted he was a smuggler, but he never brought anything but straw across the border. The guard asked himself, should he have searched more carefully? Should he have searched more closely? It bothered him so much that he couldn't enjoy his retirement. And one day he saw Mullah Nasruddin in the marketplace talking to friends, and he strode over to him. "May I ask you one question?" said the former guard. "Of course," said Nasruddin, "I will answer truthfully any question you put to me." "I know you were smuggling something over my border crossing," said the guard, "but now I am retired and could do nothing about it. Can you please tell me what you were bringing across my border that made you so rich?" "Of course," said Nasruddin, "I was smuggling donkeys, one by one, which I sold on your side of the border where they were scarce. I told you I was an honest smuggler. You should have asked me earlier." And Nasruddin laughed and laughed. And the border guard smiled and shook his head. "I have learned much from you this day," said the guard. What did you learn from this story of Mullah Nasruddin? There's another story of the Sufi figure Mullah Nasruddin, who is both a fool and a wise man. He was out one day in his garden sprinkling breadcrumbs around the flower beds. A neighbor came by and asked, "Mullah, why are you doing that?" And Nasruddin answered, "Oh, I do it to keep the tigers away." And the neighbor said, "But there aren't any tigers within thousands of miles from here." And Nasruddin replied, "Effective, isn't it?" Cause and effect. It's a powerful tool when used properly. Jack Kornfield, a writer of Buddhist wisdom, reminds us that spiritual practice is not a mindless repetition of ritual or prayer. It works through consciously being aware of the laws of cause and effect and aligning our lives to them. The breadcrumbs don't keep the tigers away because there are no tigers in these parts, unless one has escaped from the zoo. But Nasruddin shows us with his foolishness that things don't happen by themselves. If we can sense the potential of awakening to the wisdom of Buddha, we have to explore the laws that can cause it. Listen to the rules that promise to actualize your potential. Because the way we act, how we relate to ourselves, to our bodies, to our minds, to the people all around us, to our work and to our play, how we act creates the kind of world we live in, creates our personal suffering, and creates our freedom from suffering. Now, one way of acting, Buddha taught, is with right intention. And again, as with most of Buddha's teachings, it begins with ourselves. It begins with asking the deep questions and responding with our hearts. What do I really value? What do I care about in this life? It is not unlike the answers that created our 7 principles. Do we really value how others are treated? Do we really value justice for all, seeking equity and compassion? Do we really value truth and meaning, or world community, or respect for the other creatures in our world and the planet we live on? Do we really listen to ourselves when we say together, love is the doctrine of this church and service is our prayer? And Buddha said, we live our values by the way we act. Our actions create the world we live in. Repeating covenants, affirmations, reading principles, discussing the way the world isn't just, aren't the same as our everyday actions in these areas, whether these actions are taken individually or communally. Are we complacent in our actions, or are we aware what they create and what they accomplish? Answering these questions is the beginning of right understanding, of being aware of cause and effect. Jack Kornfield, in his book Seeking the Heart of Wisdom, asks, when we are ready to die, what will we want to have done? Did I learn to live wisely? And did I live well? His point is that we need to ask these questions now, wherever we are in our lives. We need to understand worldwide cause and effect. We need to believe that when a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world, a wind will be raised on the other side. Cause and effect are little actions. Buddha emphasized the Hindu belief in karma not as a punishment for doing wrong. Many people think this is the basis of karmic belief. You do wrong in this life and you pay for it in the next, possibly returning as a lesser being or living another life of pain and suffering. No, that's too easy, he said. Karma is another way of referring to the laws of cause and effect. You do wrong in this life and someone, possibly everyone, including you, suffers in this life. It means what we do now creates our future experiences. It means that if we are angry at other people, we ourselves live in a climate of hate and anger that we create. People will get angry at us in return. But if we cultivate love, live in a climate of love, it will return to us. It's a common religious teaching. It's how the world actually works. Buddha and his followers say that right intention begins by looking at what the world needs. It begins by noticing that there is a tremendous amount of suffering, of war, of poverty, and of disease in this world. And it can't be fixed by a change of government or a new monetary policy, although these things might help. The source of these sufferings are individual prejudice and fear. What the world needs most is fewer people bound by prejudice. It needs more generosity, more mercy, more openness. It needs more willingness to share. Here are some everyday examples. I see a shortage of water in the world. And so I promise I will not waste the water in my way of living. Or I see a lack of individual power in the world. And I say to myself, I will not misuse or squander the small powers I have inherited from being white, from being educated, from being healthy, from being lucky. Ruth Denison, a teacher of karma, says, whatever we do, however we act, that's what creates how we become, how we will be, and how the world will be around us. To understand karma is wonderful because within this law there are possibilities of changing the direction of our lives. We can practice being more aware. We can practice being more conscious. And we can practice wherever and whenever we can, while we're in a retreat designed for this purpose, or while driving in our cars, or while standing in line at the grocery store. Just this past week, I had another of these experiences where I got in line at the grocery store with 2 items behind a couple with a heaping basket of supplies. I prepared myself to be patient and to think kind thoughts on them when the man pushing the basket turned and said to me, "Here, go ahead of us." And the woman standing next to him turned and said, "Oh my, yes, please do." And I did go ahead, of course, and I turned while I waited for the woman in front of us to be finished, and I said, "You know, I remember shopping like this when I had a family. My cart was full, but now there's only me." And they both nodded, and they told me a little bit about their children and about their home, and how they tried to shop just once a month to save on trips to the store, and how the children looked forward to cookies, but also to fruit. Oh, we had a lovely conversation. I finally checked out, turned to thank them again, and when I went out, my heart was brimming, and I held the door open for a woman coming in with 2 small children in tow. I felt better than I had when I had entered that store. I didn't even mind the heat I went out into from the air-conditioned store. I was so totally aware of having received love, and I was aware of being able to pass it on in some small way at the moment, like holding open the door. Oh, I wish I could remember that feeling the next time I'm unhappy with one small thing in my otherwise fortunate life. And I will practice remembering. Think like the Buddha, I try to remind myself when I feel suffering, especially if it's the nature of small things like having to find time to trim my toenails. They grow so fast. Because I need to remind myself that my life is so much better than many people's. And I am the carrier, one of the billions of carriers of a possible better world in which we all might live. It is such a good feeling to know that. It is the feeling of right intention that begins with right understanding. I'll have more to say about Buddha and the Axial Age, but right now a generosity report. Due to your generosity in giving to a fund collected last year for buying equipment necessary for streaming our services online, we have been allowed to buy a second camera. While we are pre-recording our services during this lockdown, one camera has been sufficient. But when we open again, we will want to continue sending our services out over the airwaves, and 2 cameras will be necessary to capture the participation of many people in live services. Oh, I can't wait to see you back in the sanctuary, safe and secure. The Board of Trustees meets this afternoon, and they will, as they've been doing monthly, and they will again review the situation of COVID in our area and the wisdom of opening in September. Our goal is to open on September 12th with the annual water service. And if anything changes before then, we will let you know with a special email report. Oh, fingers crossed and tissues standing by for possible bad news. My reading this morning is titled The Axial Age. It was written by Matt Steffen. He said, "We may conceive of ourselves as modern or even postmodern and highlight ways in which our lives today are actually radically different from those of our ancestors. We may embrace technology and integrate it into our daily lives. We may point to new attitudes about religion or stress spirituality and well-being, even saying things like, 'We're spiritual but not religious.' But the ways that we perceive ourselves and how we relate with our communities and our world overall were shaped just over 2 millennia ago in the fundamentally transformative, creative, and ingenious stage of human history that we now call the Axial Age. I will have more to say about the Axial Age, but right now let's sing another hymn. Number 187, It Sounds Along the Ages.
It sounds along the ages, soul answering to soul. It kindles on the pages of every Bible scroll. The psalmist heard and sang it, from martyr lips it broke, and prophet tongues outrang it, till sleeping nations woke. From Sinai's cliffs it echoed, it breathed from Buddha's tree. It charmed in Athens market, it hallowed Galilee. The hammer stroke of Luther, the pilgrim seaside prayer, the oracles of Concord, one holy word declare. It calls and lo, new justice, it speaks and lo, new truth, in ever nobler stature and unexhausted youth, forever on rejoicing and knowing not of time, our laws but catch the music of its eternal chime.
Buddha lived in that period we refer to as the Axial Age. It is a very fluid period, estimated to be from about 800 to 200 years before the Common Era. It was noted by the German psychiatrist and philosopher Karl Jaspers that during this time, in most of the inhabited world, there emerged a change in thinking, in philosophy, in religious systems, and subsequent human culture. No longer was there the old reliance on gods that said, you can't change things, that's up to us. No longer was the thinking that local concerns were more important than global concerns. Now, this period included ancient Greek philosophers, Indian metaphysicians, those who articulated Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and also included the Hebrew prophets and Confucianism and Taoism in ancient China. Cosmic thinking changed during this time, as well as global thinking. It turned away from what some theologians speak of as feeding the gods to speculating about the fate of humanity, its relationship with the cosmos, and what gods by any name owed to them, to us, in other words. According to Matt Stephan, whose reading I shared before we sang, Axial Age thinkers displayed great originality and yet exhibited surprising similarity with respect to their ultimate concerns. Indian thinkers came to think of karma, the residual effects of past actions, as having direct impact upon human life, and they proposed solutions for how human beings could attain liberation from karma's effects, and this included Buddha. In ancient Greece, Socrates was the exemplar of thinkers who emphasized the use of reason in the relentless investigation of truth. And his student Plato, arguably the father of Western philosophy, adapted his teacher's insight in theorizing how the world of everyday existence and the internal world of the ideas interrelate. Chinese thinkers, striving to unify the kingdom and avert civil war, disputed and debated the appropriate way, the Tao, for human society to act. The Hebrew prophets came to view the God of their nation as the one God who created heaven and earth and who shaped the destiny of all people. Yet in all cases, the representative thinkers saw themselves as postulating solutions to life's questions and problems, not only for themselves or even for their own cultures, but for humankind as a whole. This was a new way of thinking. Some philosophers believe that a new axial age is possible now, perhaps already in process, citing the fact that technology has radically transformed the ways that people, both individually and communally, live their lives, interact with one another, communicate, and see the world around them. Religion has become more personal and less institutionalized. This could be either good or bad, depending on how you view the influence of faith. One way or another, we are part of how the world is being created, even as we draw our next breath. Every Sunday we talk with one another about the communion of names and milestones, the things that happen in this community, the stories that are shared. I have two rather sad stories to tell you this morning. Please keep Donna Tyre and Denise Alexander in your prayers, as Denise has been battling cancer. I hope they will tell us more as this battle proceeds. Also keep in your thoughts Joe Burnham's son, who has been in the hospital with congestive heart failure as he struggles to rebuild his life around this new reality. On a happier note, Roy Brake has a new job in which he will be working civilized hours again from 8 to 5, doing something he enjoys. Send him your best wishes and congratulations. And on an even lighter note, yet wait until you see the new carpet in the RE wing of the nursery. The February freeze, it turns out, did us a great favor when it broke a water pipe in that area of the building. The new carpet is magnificent. But for those who are ill, we wish healing and a lessening of pain, and we share your concerns. For those who are fortunate, we celebrate your joy. For communal blessings, we are grateful. Let us take a moment to share a meditation of love for the beloved community, and then we will hear some music. final lesson for today is on right speech. Oh, Buddha was very specific about this one. He defined it as an abstinence from false speech, an abstinence from malicious speech, from harsh speech, and abstinence from idle chatter. In other words, he was saying, don't lie, don't create discord, don't swear, don't be hostile in words or tone of voice, and don't engage in gossip. Now, I'm not a fan of the do-nots, so let's put it this way. Do speak the truth. Do promote harmony among people. Do speak in a way that is pleasing, kind, and gentle. And do be sure that what you say is useful and purposeful. That's all there is to the lesson. That's it. Wow. But not as easy as it sounds, is it? This hothead of mine has broken all the rules in the past month, I think, some of them more than once. But in my own defense, I know immediately when I've done so, and I promise myself to do better next time. See what I mean about practice, though? You can know all the right ways of doing things, but as human beings, we are prone to ignoring our own better sense. And so Buddha made more lists for us. This is one I rather like. I find it wise and humorous at the same time. He calls this list lowly topics to avoid. How many of these have you committed recently? Talking about kings, robbers, ministers of state. Talking about armies, alarms, and battles. Speaking about food and drink, clothing, furniture, garlands, and scents. Talking about your relatives. Speaking of vehicles, villages, towns, cities, and the countryside. Talking about women and heroes. Hello, aren't they the same thing? Relaying the gossip of the street and the well. Telling tales of the dead and tales of diversity, including philosophical discussions of the past and future, the creation of the world and of the sea, and talk of whether things exist or not. To abstain from all of these, he explains, is a virtue. But I say, oh my, what is there left to say? Modern philosophers suggest that we don't speak of politics or religion in social gatherings of diverse world views. That's a good part of Buddha's list as well. But I'm mystified by his including food and drink. Why, just this week I was talking to a neighbor who told me she had roasted a chicken breast for dinner the night before and would get 2 meals from it because it was so big. And I asked her if she'd ever brined the chicken before baking it, and she said no, she'd never tried that, she'd heard of it. So I shared my recipe with her, having just discovered the deliciousness of this method in recent months. And she thanked me profusely and said she would try it because, in truth, her chicken had turned out quite dry and rubbery. And I felt virtuous with this conversation. Perhaps it's the tone and intention that is important. I try not to preach a healthy diet when I see only boxes of donuts in the library before in-person services. And you know, I often fail to restrain my tongue. But my intentions are pure. All right, I won't mention it again. Other topics on the list that seem not dangerous to me, I can see might be sources of envy if introduced incorrectly. Gossip I'm against, especially in small, tight-knit groups. I go along with don't speak ill of the dead, but I wouldn't disbar them from my memories or my speech entirely, reminding myself they can't defend themselves and I should reserve my conversation for their more delightful aspects. And if you're going to talk about the creation of the world and of the sea, I would recommend that you follow the methodology of Neil deGrasse Tyson and avoid speaking of those things to known creationists. I think Buddha's point is this: know your audience. Understand how words can be hurtful. Forget that old rhyme, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Oh, the burden of right speech should never be on the listener. But it takes 2 or more to make a conversation. And I think right speech should also include being willing to question another who you might be just misunderstanding, and being willing to apologize and rephrase if you are the one misunderstood. You know, I love it when people come up to me and say, I remember what you said about such, and I want you to know how much it has meant to me. But I also would like it when people come up to me and say, when you said this and that, you hurt my feelings, or you were wrong, or you sounded a bit smug. Because often we speak out of habit, not out of thoughtfulness. I remember one time saying to a director of religious education that the children were particularly overstimulated this morning, and they were behaving like a band of wild Indians. And she firmly reminded me that this was a remark filled with prejudice against Native Americans. I had given no thought to what I was saying, and I acknowledged with horror that she was right. And I have since banned that phrase from my vocabulary. This is the area of right speech that concerns me the most. The things we say out of habit. The things we say because our parents said them. The things we say because everyone says them. These are the habits to be corrected. So when I say to myself that I try to think like the Buddha, I have shared with you 2 more ways he would say we might practice the spiritual discipline of the Eightfold Path. Be aware, be awake, be the Buddha. And when you fail, forgive yourself and begin again, this time with love. Please join me in our closing hymn, number 181 in the gray hymnal, No Matter If You Live Now, Far, or Near.
No matter if you live now far or near, no matter what your weakness or your strength, there is not one alive we count outside. May deeper joy for all now come at length. May deeper joy for all now come at length. Let none among us lie or self-deceive, nor cultivate a hatred all or part. May never one of us live by our rage, nor wish another injury of heart, nor wish another injury of heart. Just as the goodly mother will protect her children in at risk of her own life, so may we nurture an old mindfulness, a boundless heart beyond all fear and strife, a boundless heart beyond all fear and strife.
Our chalice has burned this morning for being a light unto ourselves. And so we take it back into our own hearts as we share this time together and leave one another. Benediction is from Jack Cornfield, who I've been quoting all morning. He said, a cartoon I once saw depicts a car on a long western desert highway, and a roadside sign warns, your own tedious thoughts next 200 miles. He said, the mind secretes thoughts. The thoughts think themselves. This is what minds do. But we can be aware of the thoughts of our own mind. So may it be in all our lives.